My son dropped the phrase over morning coffee. "Mom, I sold your Cadillac." I froze. The spoon slipped from my fingers and clattered into the cup, splashing coffee onto the table. My chest felt hollow, as if the air had been pulled from the room. That car was not just metal and paint. My husband had put every spare dime into it for 7 years, polishing the chrome until it gleamed like silver, skipping new winter coats so he could save for the tires. He always called it yours, pressing the keys into my hand like a gift. And now my son had decided its fate with a single sentence, as if it were nothing. My son's words stayed with me long after he left. I stood at the kitchen window staring at the empty space below. For 20 years the Cadillac had rested there, steady as a monument. Now there were only 2 pale ovals on the pavement where the tires had pressed down, a faint outline where oil had darkened the concrete. On Sundays we drove to St. Michael's on Ashland. We left by 8:15, always early. He would carry the thermos, check his watch, and settle the children's quarrels over the window seat with a system. Odd Sundays for Annie, even ones for Tom. I can still see the pink church parking tag with the black number 47. It hung from the mirror until the glue failed, and he fixed it with 2 drops from a yellow tube. When he died on January 14, 10 years ago, I left it hanging. After his death, the Cadillac became my anchor. I kept the insurance on storage status $22.14 each month, drafted from my account ending in 4418. I paid the registration renewal with check number 1904 on August 16, 2018, writing Cadillac on the memo line in neat block letters. I kept a short log taped inside the pantry. 03/05 started, smooth idle. 06/03 battery strong. 11:06 rear tire low. Added air at BP 32 psi. Receipts went into a plastic bag. Wiper blades, June 2017, $11.98. Battery, April 2019, $109.99. 2 quarts of oil, October 2021, $13.18. My handwriting kept him alive. When I sat inside, I could breathe again. The smell was old leather mixed with the sweetness of worn vinyl. The seat remembered my shape. I would turn the key only far enough to light the dash, hear the chime and stop. That sound without motion felt like a heartbeat. When my son said he had sold it, the verb itself was wrong. Sold meant a price, a signature, a transfer. That car had never been a commodity. It had been a place to drink coffee from the thermos after funerals, to wipe popsicle stains from the back seat, to sit in silence that never felt empty. It was not for sale. The week after, I moved like a stranger in my own apartment. I folded laundry and forgot which drawer held the dish towels. I cooked soup and set the mail in a neat pile beside my spoon, an electric company card about a meter change, a pharmacy circular for vitamins, a dental cleaning reminder. I kept looking for his handwriting. 10 years after the funeral, I opened the metal box from the hall closet. Inside were the small things from the glove box. The tire gauge that read 2 pounds low, the flashlight with the weak beam, a park district map with a coffee ring. A napkin with AL's lock and key 773-555-0197, written in his square hand. I ran my thumb across the numbers until my skin grew warm. People tell you to let go, as if memory were a lever you can flip. But life is not a lever. It is receipts, warranty cards, check numbers, oil changes logged in ink. If I let the Cadillac go, what would follow behind it? The sound of his boots in the hall on winter nights. The way he rested his chin on my shoulder for exactly 5 counts. A car holds more than a body. It holds years that otherwise have nowhere to live. "Mom, I sold your Cadillac." I repeated it aloud in the empty kitchen. The words sat there blunt and merciless. I placed my hand flat on the table. I am 68 years old. I have every document filed since 1983. Loss does not walk into my life without evidence. A week later he returned. He did not knock. He let himself in and set his hands on the back of a chair as though my kitchen were a stage. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but his eyes moved like hands already reaching for something. "Mom, listen," he began. "I did not do this for nothing. The money will go into my business. It will be better for you too. You want me to stand on my own 2 feet, do you not? Business." He always said that word with a swell of pride. as though naming it made it real. I asked him what kind of business. Wholesale vape supplies, he answered quickly. Margins are clean. A guy in Joliet is ready to sell me inventory cheap. I just need starting capital. Once it moves, I can double the money in weeks. My husband used to sell ball bearings. He could weigh a box in his hands and tell if it was short by even one. He told me often, if a man cannot explain his profit in one sentence, he is selling you a hole in the ground. My son's sentences sounded like holes. He did not ask me how I felt about losing the Cadillac. He did not even mention it. His voice was the voice of someone pitching an investor, not speaking to a mother. When he finished, he leaned back against the counter, smiling as though waiting for applause. I poured tea into a cup but did not offer him any. My hand shook but only slightly. How much was the car worth to you? I asked. His smile stiffened. It was sitting there wasting away. $4,000 was fair. I remembered the offer of $12,500 in cash that my husband had turned down in 2009. He had stood on the curb with the envelope in his hand and handed it back without hesitation. Not for sale, he said. It is family. My son's words, $4,000, sounded like something borrowed from a pawn shop. He went on about his plans, online sales, storefronts, distributors. He said, "You will see, Mom. This will set us both up. You should be glad I am finally taking charge." Finally. He was 42 years old. In his mind, the Cadillac had not been mine, nor my husband's. It had been a pile of coins waiting for him to break open. I did not argue. I let him leave with his self-satisfaction. When the door shut, I went straight to the bedroom. Behind the winter sweaters in the closet sat the old metal box. I dragged it out and set it on the bed. The lid stuck, the hinge stiff with dust. I opened it with a butter knife, just as my husband once taught me to do when it jammed. Inside lay the record of everything he had drilled into me about preparation. There was the spare Cadillac key, still taped inside an empty Band-Aid tin. His handwriting on the label was steady and square. Second key, do not throw away. There was the insurance policy, reduced to storage coverage but never canceled. The Illinois title issue date, June 3, 2001. Registered owner, Margaret and Pierce. The VIN written twice on an index card in his hand. 647S7Q20541. Registration renewals with check numbers written at the corner. Every piece was in order, untouched, irrefutable. I lifted the papers one by one, as if to feel his hands again. I set the key in my pocket and the title in a plastic sleeve. I closed the box, hearing his voice as if he stood just behind me. Always keep a backup plan. That night I slept with the box under the bed. His plan was mine now. The next morning I folded laundry and listened for his car outside. I imagined the words I would use when the time came. Short words, not soft ones. Words that would not bend. That night I did not sleep well. I lay flat on my back, the metal box under the bed where my husband's shoes once stood. The weight of it pressed upward into the mattress as though it wanted to remind me it was there. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my son's voice again. It will be better for you too. Better for me by stripping away the last piece of my husband. At dawn I rose. The air in the apartment was cool and damp, the kind that carries old smells out of closets. I set the kettle on the stove and opened the box again, spreading its contents across the table like cards in a slow game. The title, the registration slips, the faded insurance documents, the spare key inside the Band-Aid tin. I placed each piece in order and read them aloud like scripture. Illinois title. Registered owner Margaret and Pierce. Issue date, June 3, 2001. VIN, 647S7Q2200541. Insurance, Statewide Mutual, policy #SM, 482117. Paid through October 31st. Registration renewal, August 16, 2018. Check number 1904. Noted Cadillac. Every fact was a brick. Together they built a wall no one could push through. I thought of the way my son had stood in my kitchen, trying to persuade me with the softness of his voice. That was his tactic always. Speak like a helper, while his eyes searched the room for what they can take. My husband's eyes were different. They always looked at a thing squarely, as though it deserved the dignity of truth. I had been blind to the difference for too long. I made a list on a yellow legal pad. Lists have saved me more than once. Title in my possession. Spare key in my possession. Insurance valid and current. VIN documented in writing. Buyer unknown but has no legal title. Son claims sale but without rights. When I set the pen down, I felt something shift inside me. A tightening like a rope pulled taut. I was not just a mother anymore. I was the registered owner. The custodian of evidence. The witness of what was true. At noon I called him. He answered on the second ring, his voice already impatient. You will not get the money, I said. My tone surprised even me. Firm, flat, unshakable. The car is not yours. There was silence, then a sharp laugh. Mom, be reasonable. I am reasonable, I said. I have the title. I have the key. The policy is in my name. You cannot sell what is not yours. His voice rose until it rattled the line. Words spilled out, selfish, stubborn, confused. He hung up on the last one. I placed the receiver back in its cradle and felt my pulse slow. The retaliation came quickly. 2 days later, my neighbor Mrs. Kravitz cornered me by the mailboxes. She leaned close, her eyes bright with the thrill of fresh gossip. They say you are not in your right mind anymore, she whispered. Your son worries you might start giving property away. I looked her in the eye and said only, I remember that the title is in my name. Her smile faltered. That evening my grandson knocked at the door. His face was pale, as if he were delivering bad news in a hospital corridor. He handed me a cream envelope with no stamp. The letter had read, Feld and Wexler, Notarial Services. Date June 21st. Subject, Notice of concern regarding capacity to manage property. The language was slick, as though written to soothe while it cut. Observed confusion, irregular decisions, proposed interim measure. At the bottom was the suggestion of a family power of attorney. And then a signature, a name I recognized not from any courthouse, but from summer cookouts years ago. One of my son's old drinking companions, now parading as a notary. I folded the letter once, sharply, and set it beside the metal box. Another piece of evidence, nothing more. That night I made a second list. May electric bill, paid May 28th. Check number 2241, $83. 17. June rent, paid June 1st, account ending 4418, receipt stapled to calendar. Groceries, Jewel-Osco, $64. 82 debit card, June 12th. All checks balanced, no discrepancies. If they wanted to question my capacity, I would answer with arithmetic. Numbers do not tremble. The next morning I called Thomas Leary. He had been my husband's friend, then his pallbearer, then the man I trusted with every legal paper since. When he answered, he said Maggie in the old way, and the breath came back into my lungs. I carried the box to his office, its weight solid against my hip. He put on his reading glasses and went through everything page by page. He typed the VIN into a state registry with 2 fingers. He checked, rechecked, and finally leaned back. The sale is illegal, he said evenly. Formally, the Cadillac still belongs to you. The buyer has no valid title. The letter is theater. It has no force. You are the owner. He drafted a statement on his letterhead. It said plainly that any attempted transfer of the vehicle bearing VIN 647S7Q20541 without my written consent was invalid and could constitute fraud under Illinois law. He cited 2 statutes whose numbers I memorized even though I did not need them. He gave me 2 copies. One for the police if needed. One for your records. I thanked him and carried the box home again. I set it on the table, placed his letter on top, and added a new line to my list. Lawyer's confirmation in writing. That evening the phone rang. My son. You had no right to involve a lawyer, he snapped. I had every right, I said. It is my car. Mom, people are talking. You are not thinking clearly. Then let them talk about this, I answered. My money is off the table. My car is off the table. My name is off the table. There was silence, long and heavy, before he hung up. Later that night, a message arrived from an unknown number. A photograph of the Cadillac parked in front of a garage I did not recognize, the rear quarter panel cut off by the frame. Beneath it, bring the title tomorrow 10 a.m. He will pay you the rest. Do not make this harder. I studied the photograph. The St. Michael's tag was still visible on the mirror. The pencil-thin scratch on the passenger door from 2002 was there too. My husband's fingerprints still lived in those flaws. I printed the picture and slid it into the box. Then I placed the spare key in my right pocket, the Band-Aid tin in my left. If one was taken, the other would remain. I laid out my clothes for the next day. Plain blouse, dark slacks, low shoes. Not for style but for steadiness. I slid the title in its plastic sleeve under the mattress where no one would look. Before bed, I wrote one last line on the yellow pad. Faith in myself intact. I turned off the light and lay with the box at my side, as if it were a shield. I did not pray for victory. I prayed only for clarity, for the sound of an engine that knew my name. When the call ended, I sat at the table with my yellow pad in front of me. The words I had spoken still rang in my ears. The car is not yours. And you will not get the money. For years I had given way, softened my voice, and chosen silence. Now the words had landed like a gavel. 2 days later, Mrs. Kravitz caught me again by the mailboxes. She leaned closer than necessary, the smell of peppermint gum sharp. They say you are not in your right mind anymore, she whispered. Your son worries you might give property away. So the campaign had begun. Rumors are cheaper than lawyers. He had chosen gossip as his first weapon. That evening my grandson brought a letter, hand-delivered, no stamp, cream envelope, heavy paper. It claimed to be a notice of concern regarding capacity to manage property, signed by a notary whose name I knew from barbecue beer runs 20 years ago. The language was soft, almost kind, protecting assets, ensuring stability, interim measures. But at the bottom it demanded my signature on a family power of attorney. I set it on the table without unfolding it again. Another trick. Another piece of evidence for the box. The next morning a neighbor paused by my door. He is just worried about you, she said, eyes darting toward the letter she must have heard about already. It is not easy when parents get confused. I balance my own checkbook, I said flatly. May electric bill. $83.17, paid May 28th, check number 2241. June rent. $640, paid June 1st, account ending 4418, receipt stapled to calendar. Her face reddened. She muttered something and left. The pressure grew. My phone rang at odd hours. Once it was a man's voice I did not know. Bring the title. Make it easy for everyone. Then silence. Another time it was my son, angry now, his voice stripped of charm. You are making this worse than it has to be. The car is gone. Accept it. We can settle the money. No, I said. The car is not gone. And the money is not yours. He cursed and hung up. Days later, the unknown number returned with a message. A photograph of the Cadillac parked nose out at a garage, its hood propped as if waiting for surgery. Beneath it, last chance. 10 a.m. Tomorrow. Bring the title. I printed the photo and added it to my file. St. Michael's tag, number 47, still dangled from the mirror. My husband's scratch on the passenger door still traced a line only I knew. The next morning, I walked to the police station with the box under my arm. The desk sergeant was young, maybe 30, but he listened as I laid out each piece. Title, insurance, registration, the letter from Thomas Leary, the photograph. He leafed through them slowly. Formally, he said, the car is yours. If anyone claims otherwise, it is attempted fraud. Keep these papers close. I nodded. They are closer than family, I said. When I left, the sun was high. I felt the shift again inside me. Not victory, not yet, but a line drawn. For the first time, the pressure no longer felt like a storm pressing inward. It felt like wind at my back. I carried the box back to Thomas Leary's office 2 days later. The letter from the notary, the photograph of the Cadillac, the messages demanding I bring the title, all of it went on his desk in a neat pile. He read every page. He did not rush. He adjusted his glasses, typed the VIN again into the state registry, and then looked at me squarely. Maggie, the car is still yours. Formally and legally. That buyer has nothing. Your son has nothing. The bill of sale they claim does not exist, at least not with your signature. Without the title, no transfer is valid. I nodded, but he went further. He pulled a folder from his drawer and laid out copies of statutes, pointing with his pen. This is fraud if they try to push it. And this letter, he tapped the notary's cream envelope, is smoke. It does not strip you of rights. It has no legal weight. I breathed more easily. Facts are steadier than voices. He handed me a typed statement on his letterhead, 2 copies. It read, any attempted transfer of the vehicle bearing VIN 647S7Q20541, without the written authorization of its titled owner, Margaret and Pierce, is invalid and may constitute fraud under Illinois law. He underlined my name and the VIN. Carry this with you. If police get involved, show them. You hold the key literally. I placed 1 copy in the metal box and 1 in my purse. I touched the Band-Aid tin in my pocket, just to feel the cool outline of the spare key. That evening the phone rang again. This time my son's voice was less angry, more pleading. Mom, listen. I know it looks bad, but I did this for us. The money will multiply. You don't understand how business works now. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, the only thing multiplying is your lies. He tried again, softer. If you give me the title, we can settle it cleanly. The man is waiting. He trusts me. I answered. The man should have trusted the title. Then I hung up. The next day I received another envelope. This one was cheaper paper, photocopied and signed. It claimed to be a family petition, requesting the court to review my capacity to manage property. It had no court stamp, no case number. Just words designed to frighten. I slid it into the box without comment. But proof speaks louder. I began making my own file, not just storing theirs. I printed the bank receipts. May electric bill, June rent, grocery statements. I added a page with photographs of the Cadillac taken over the years. Parked in space 12, license plate visible, same VIN. I even printed the photo they had sent me of the car at the garage. Their own attempt at pressure had become evidence of possession. When I stacked the papers, the box felt heavier, not with paper but with strength. For the first time, I felt the balance tip. Thomas called the next day. If the police get involved, it will come to a demonstration. You have the title, the key, the VIN, the records. Let him talk himself into a corner. The car will answer for you. I thanked him. That night, as I slid the box under the bed, I whispered aloud, always keep a backup plan. 2 weeks later, the summons came through the officer Thomas had spoken to. Meet at 4120 North Maple, 10 a.m. Regarding disputed vehicle. Bring ownership documents. The address matched the number stenciled on the garage door in the photograph they had sent me. I placed the title in its plastic sleeve, slid Thomas's letter into my purse, and put the spare key back into the Band-Aid tin. Right pocket for the key. Left pocket for the tin. If one was taken, the other would remain. I arrived at 9:55. The street was narrow, a line of small houses and a body shop that bled the smell of solvent into the air. The Cadillac sat angled at the curb, hood down now, paint dulled by dust but still itself. The St. Michael's tag, number 47, hung from the mirror like a patient witness. My son stood beside a man in a leather jacket. He waved when he saw me, too brightly, like a host greeting an unwilling guest. The buyer had the careful look of someone who believes he is about to win something for less than it is worth. A squad car eased up behind us. 2 officers stepped out, a younger one with a notebook and a taller one with a gray mustache. The older officer spoke first. Morning. We are here to verify ownership and possession. Everyone stay calm. Ma'am, you are Miss Pierce? I am, I said. Margaret and Pierce. My son started before anyone asked him. Officer, my mother is confused. She thinks. The mustached officer lifted a hand. Sir, you will have your turn. Ma'am, documents, please. I handed him the plastic sleeve with the title and Thomas's letter behind it. He read my name, the issue date June 3, 2001, and ran his finger down to the VIN. He looked up at the buyer. Do you have a signed title or bill of sale from Miss Pierce? The buyer glanced at my son. I have a paper, he said, pulling out a crumpled page. It was a typed receipt with my son's signature, and the words deposit $800 scratched in blue ink. No title. No notary. No transfer. The officer did not even touch it. He turned to me. Ma'am, do you have keys? I held up the Band-Aid tin, opened it, and let the spare key fall into my palm. The younger officer stepped to the windshield and read the VIN at the corner of the dash. 647Q220541, he called out. Matches, the older officer said, glancing at the title. He nodded to me. Go ahead. I walked to the driver's door. My son tried to step forward. Mom, please. You do not understand. I did not answer. The key slid into the lock with the quiet click of something that belongs where it is. I opened the door, sat down, placed both hands on the wheel, and breathed in the old leather. I turned the key. The engine caught at once, the low, steady purr I knew as well as my husband's voice. For a moment, everything in me went still. It felt like a hand on my shoulder from years ago. The body shop workers drifted out to watch. A woman with a stroller stopped on the sidewalk. The buyer stared at the running car like it had broken a promise to him. My son tried again, his tone slipping toward panic. It is a misunderstanding. My mother does not understand titles, she. I cut the engine, stepped out, and held the key up so that it shone in the thin sun. My voice was even. I understand ownership. The title is in my name. The policy is in my name. The registration is in my name. The key is in my hand. The younger officer wrote while the older one spoke to my son. Sir, without a signed title from the owner, there is no valid transfer. Your deposit arrangement is a private matter between you and the buyer. The vehicle remains Ms. Pierce's property. The buyer found his voice. I gave him $800 cash. He said his mother agreed. The officer shrugged in that small official way. You may pursue your money in civil court. As for the car, it is not yours. My son's face went hard, then soft, then hard again. He looked at me, not at the officers. Mom, do not do this. Think about family. Think about what Dad would want. I answered him with the only sentence that belonged here. My money is off the table. He blinked as if the words had struck him. We can make this right, he said quickly to the officers. She is old. She gets confused. We have a notary. I reached into my purse, took out Thomas's letter, and handed it to the mustached officer. He read the single paragraph aloud, steady. Any attempted transfer of the vehicle bearing VIN 647720541, without the written authorization of its titled owner, Margaret and Pierce, is invalid and may constitute fraud under Illinois law. He looked up. Clear enough. The younger officer finished his notes. Report will state. Transaction invalid. No title. Owner retains possession. We will file it under today's date. The buyer turned on my son. You told me your mother signed. You said everything was clean. My son's voice dropped quick and sharp. Calm down. We will fix it. He turned to me, switching to a gentle tone again. Mom, you will not even miss the car. It was sitting there. I am trying to build something. For us. For you, I said. You built this. The older officer addressed my son one last time. Sir, if you pressure your mother again, we will treat it as harassment. Walk away. Silence settled, the kind that follows when a story finds its ending before those who started it are ready. The buyer shook his head, cursed under his breath, and walked off. My son stayed where he was, staring at the Cadillac as if it had betrayed him. A neighbor I did not know stepped forward from the small crowd. He wore a work apron dusted with sawdust. Ma'am, he said, quiet and respectful. Do you want me to watch while you drive it home? I nodded once. Thank you. I slid back into the driver's seat. The key turned, the engine answered, and I set the transmission into drive. In the mirror, my son stood on the curb, hands limp at his sides. He did not wave. At the corner, the older officer lifted a hand in a small salute. Take care, Miss Pierce. I will, I said. I drove the familiar street slowly, letting the engine warm to its own voice. At each red light I checked the rear view. The St. Michael's tag swung lightly. Number 47 fading but legible. I could almost hear my husband pat the fender twice. She runs true. When I pulled into space 12, the two pale ovals of concrete disappeared under the tires as if the ground itself exhaled. I turned off the engine and sat a moment longer. Then, practical as ever, I took out my yellow pad and wrote the date and time. June 29th, return vehicle to space 12. Police report filed. Transaction invalid. Engine start okay. Idle steady. I locked the car and went upstairs with the metal box under my arm. I placed Thomas's letter back on top, then added the new report number the officer had given me on a sticky note. I set the Band-Aid tin beside the box. Right pocket empty now. Left pocket still holding the cool square of metal and memory. The phone rang before I could sit. My son again. I let it ring. When the machine picked up, his voice spilled into the kitchen, all at once begging, bargaining, blaming. Mom, we need to talk. This got out of hand. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You could have just given me the title. I would have taken care of you. People saw. You made me look like a thief. I pressed the button and erased the message. Then I pressed the second button and turned the machine off altogether. Some things do not deserve storage. By evening, the neighborhood had already found its version of what happened. Mrs. Kravitz hovered by the mailboxes, ready to offer fresh charity for a wound I did not have. I passed her without stopping. At my door, I paused and looked back through the window toward the lot. The Cadillac sat where it belonged. In the fading light, the chrome caught a thin strip of sun. On the table, the yellow pad lay open. I added one last line under Part 7 in my head. Public exposure complete. Witnesses: 2 officers, bystanders, buyer. Outcome: possession restored. Pressure neutralized by proof. I put the pen down and stood very still. The air in the apartment felt different. It did not feel like vacancy. It felt like a room that had been measured, repaired, and closed with a proper latch. Tomorrow would be Sunday. I knew what I would do. I shared this story with you because I believe every experience has something to teach us. If you felt even a little connection, please leave me a like and subscribe so you can join me for the next journey. And in the comments, tell me what this story reminded you of in your own life. I am always touched by your words, and I cannot wait to read them.